And that brings to a close questions for oral answer today. Would some honourable member care to move that the House take note of miscellaneous business?
Speaker.
David Shearer, the Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker. Mr Speaker, about a couple of days ago, the government entered its 100th day in office since the election. And it's a pretty shambolic and sorry sight that we're seeing after 100 days. A deficit of $12 billion, Mr Speaker, which is twice what the Prime Minister believes that they will get for our assets if they sell them. I mean, that's if they get anything like $6 billion. I mean, that's up to the Finance Minister. That's just a best guess. And not even a best guess, actually, just a guess, if he said what was... So what we have, Mr Speaker, is a $12 billion deficit, a $12 billion deficit that this country's showing now, which is an indication of where the economy is going. Income tax down, GST down, company tax 5% down. This is a shambolic start to the year. And the only real offer on the table is to how to sell our way to this brighter future that we were promised at the election just 100 days ago. You sell your way to a brighter future, and how do you do that? Well, you flog off our most valuable farmland, and that's a start. Through the Crafer Farm deal is one way, and we know that there's at least 16,000 hectares of land in front of the Overseas Investment Office today waiting for a decision. Another 16,000 hectares in addition to the Crafer farms. And thank you to Justice Miller, who had the good sense to understand that actually you need to look at this land and understand whether it's in New Zealand's best interest to sell this land and whether it brings real value to New Zealand. Thank you, Justice Miller, for telling us actually that ministers don't have their hands tied. They don't have their hands tied when they come to look at these things, but in fact they are able to make decisions on New Zealand's best interest. And these ministers, and the one Mr Williamson is here in the House right now, did not do that and said that his hands were tied. But there's more, Mr Speaker, because as I go around the country and I speak to people all over this country, all of them say the same thing. Why are we selling our land, and why are we selling off our assets? That's what they all say. And we will get in behind the citizens-initiated referendum. We will get in behind that, because that is exactly why what New Zealanders want to see. They want to have an opportunity to oppose these asset sales. And why should they oppose them? Well, because they believe, most New Zealanders believe, we already own them. They ask me, why do we need to buy these assets again? And when you look at the popularity, Mr Speaker, of the sale of these assets, when you actually look at how many people actually really do support the sale, it's only about a quarter of the people who support them. The rest of them oppose them. The rest of them oppose these assets. And they oppose them because they're never going to get a look in to buy them. That's the real reason. And the only people who will is a quarter that actually these people here say that they represent the rich people who are going to be able to put up the money in order to buy those shares. They're going to sell these assets at the bottom of the market to people who can afford them, and most New Zealanders, Mr Speaker, most of those people are not able to buy those shares. And we know, Mr Speaker, we know that these people believe that many of these assets were guaranteed by the Prime Minister before the election, that mums and dads would be at the front of the queue, and that's what they were told when these sales came up. And we know that none of that is true in the legislation. The legislation was put in front of this House, and there's absolutely no guarantee. So we're just going to have to believe this government that somehow mums and dads are going to be first in the queue. And that's absolute nonsense, Mr Speaker. That is a broken promise, and we know it. on foreign ownership. And we know that that's not going to be in the legislation either. We know that there is going to be no cap on foreign ownership in this legislation.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable David Carter.
Mr. Speaker, I'm quite happy to compare